Hey everyone. A few weeks ago we talked about shoulder impingement syndrome and how it's a common diagnosis, and we went over a few tests that you could try on yourself to see if it was something that could potentially be contributing or causing your pain. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about that and go over some things that you can do at home, some exercises that you can try out that'll hopefully help if you are dealing with something like this or think you might be. So just remember, it's always a good idea to see a healthcare professional if you are dealing with any sort of pain. They'll be able to give you the best advice for whatever you are dealing with and kind of lead you in the right direction there. But hopefully this will help. So just a diagnosis, giving somebody a diagnosis such as shoulder impingement syndrome doesn't tell the whole story. Now, in the case of this condition, impingement syndrome, all it's really saying, or all it really means, is that there's pinching happening because the shoulder isn't staying properly centered in the joint. And it's important to figure out why that's happening. And there's a couple different things that we primarily see that tends to lead to the development of impingement. And it's important to note that these aren't the only things that can cause it or lead to it, but it's just the main things that we see in the clinic. So let's jump into those. So the first big thing that we see when it comes to impingement, and a big reason why this condition develops, is a limited or a lack of thoracic mobility. So the spine of your mid-back, limited movement through there. And specifically going backwards, extending backwards, and a little bit of rotation in there as well. And we typically see this with, anybody really, but it's a big thing with desk workers who tend to develop the slouched, rounded forward shoulders position. And then over time, when it becomes kind of a habit, it makes it very difficult to start to extend backwards. And what happens with this is, as those shoulders round forward, it closes off the space within the shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint. And so it makes it harder for the shoulder to go through ranges of motion without having to stress a little bit more each time it goes through a movement. And over time, it can lead to some of that pinching and pain in the shoulder. And then, so another big thing with this, having enough thoracic mobility, is very important for overhead athletes. Just being able to extend through that mid-back allows for, greater ranges of motion. If you're a thrower, volleyball, swimmer, you can generate more torque, more power. It's just beneficial overall. And a big thing that we're able to use here as chiropractors is a really, really good way to start to kind of open up that mid-back and regain some of that extension through the thoracic spine, is being able to manipulate or adjust the mid-back. But also a couple things that you can do at home to start to kind of get that mobility back through there is get your handy-dandy foam roller out and lay it on the ground, and you're just going to extend backwards over this foam roller. So we want to avoid foam rolling the low back. We actually want to kind of avoid getting a lot of movement through there because it kind of counteracts what we're trying to achieve here. So I like to cross my arms here and then just nice and easy extend backwards over that foam roller while trying to keep the low back nice and flat to the ground. And then we'll just go down a little bit and back here, and then just kind of work our way up through that entire thoracic spine. And then the whole time, so we're trying to avoid a lot of this movement, a lot of extending through that low back, because it starts to, again, be counterproductive to what we're doing. One more thing just to kind of focus on, if you want to try this one out as well, just to add in a little bit more rotation, is if you sit back on your heels, just like this, and then come down here, and then one arm behind your head, and we're just gonna gently, nice and easy, rotate to the side and back, side and back. And if you are dealing with shoulder pain, you get any pinch in there, you can just put your arm across the chest there and do the same thing. Any sort of movement through there is better than none. So give those a shot, and we'll talk about the second reason now. So the second reason is related to how the scapula and the shoulder are working in relation to one another. So if we take a quick look at the scapula, there's 4 muscles that surround the scapula to make it to provide stability around that area. So you got your traps, your levator, your rhomboids, and your serratus anterior. Now, these muscles should all be working in sync to provide a stable base for the shoulder to move through different ranges of motion in the most efficient manner. Now, if that gets thrown off, well, if the scapular stabilizers aren't working all in sync together, then that shoulder is going to have to take over somewhere. It's going to start working harder. There's going to be more stress and strain placed on that shoulder, and it can lead to some of that pain, that pinching sensation within the shoulder joint. So a lot of people will think of this in terms of strength and weakness. So some muscles are strong, some are weak. I like to think of it more as motor control. So being able to move through a range of motion in a very controlled manner. So when with the scapula here, there are a couple things that tend to happen. A couple muscles up here start to get a little bit tight and overactive, and then other ones like the serratus down here can tend to become a little bit underactive or not activating properly. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's weak. It's just it's kind of turned off or it's shut off a little bit. So that's where that motor control aspect comes into play. So when the stabilizing muscles of the scapula are all working in sync together, everything is going to start to work more smoothly and more efficient through there. So I want to show you something here that you can try out at home, just to start to kind of rework some of the patterning and working the motion of the scapula in sync with the shoulder. So all you got to do is just go to a wall, and you don't have to have your feet all the way up against the wall, maybe about a foot and a half out from the wall. And then all we're going to do is you want to make sure that your head, your mid back, and your low back stay flush on the wall the whole time. Don't let anything come off, okay? So we're going to go here, and then just nice and easy, we're going to start to raise those arms up. And we're going to keep them straight the entire time until you hit the back of the wall here. And if you feel, a little bit of pain or pinch, like that impingement going through this, just kind of stick in that range there. And as you do more, it'll loosen up a little bit for you. So common thing that we see when working this motion here is that low back tends to kind of pop off the wall and it starts to arch a little bit. We want to avoid doing that. And then the second thing is making sure that these upper traps here are staying nice and relaxed. So we're not shrugging up. That's exaggerated a little bit, but not shrugging up to come up here. Those arms staying nice and straight, and then we're coming back down. So we have the thumbs out right now. If that seems pretty easy, you can just bring your thumbs in and see if that makes it just a little bit harder. And all we're doing is we're just kind of repatterning the motion and in regards to the scapula and the shoulder, helping them start to kind of work together again and work in sync. Okay? And then from there we can get into some wall angel stuff that we'll save for another day. But I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please let us know, and we will be back with something new.